Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Said Dan channel. There's going to be a slight delay in the revealing of all of the Hinman documents, and I'll assume that everybody under the sun at this point is aware that Judge Torres ruled against the SEC's motion to make forever private the Hinman Ethereum Free Pass related emails and drafts and all the associated documents. So that was certainly a ruling that is ultimately in Ripple's favor. But now we get word that there's going to be a slight delay. And there's no shortage of speculation going on today, because this news broke this morning. There's no shortage of speculation that perhaps this has something to do with a settlement between the SEC and Ripple. And some attorneys within our community think that actually is possible and this might be a sign, and other attorneys within our community actually don't think that that's a sign. So I'm going to share with you various points of view here, including perspective from attorney Mark Fagel, who is a former SEC attorney. I've got some stuff from attorney Fred Rispoli of the XRP community. I got stuff from attorney Jeremy Hogan and attorney John Deaton. But before going any further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby. And just for fun, damn it. So here's a headline from the Crypto Basic. SEC versus Ripple. Both parties agree on new date to make Hinman docs public. Attorney Filan disclosed that both the SEC and Ripple filed a joint letter requesting an extension to file public redacted versions of the summary judgment materials and accompanying exhibits, including the drafts of William Hinman's controversial speech on crypto. The parties want the deadline for filing redacted versions of summary judgment materials to be moved by 1 week from June 6th, 2023 to June 13th, 2023. So I'll say here, I don't know why why Ripple was willing to sign on to the request for this extension. I don't know why they'd literally be for it. I saw Attorney Deaton was speculating, and this may be as simple as this. I saw him speculating that perhaps, it's really just the SEC that wanted this, and then Ripple kind of figured, well, the judge is probably just going to grant it anyway, because historically, if you look at the types of extensions that have been granted, especially for something like this, and it's not a crazy amount of time, maybe Ripple just assumed that it was just not something worth fighting. And I can understand that perspective. The only thing where I'm still scratching my head a little bit is why would you don't have to proactively sign on to it. You don't have to push back against it, but you don't have to proactively sign on. So I'm kind of scratching my head on that one a little bit. Not the hugest of deals. They're not going to stop this information from coming out. Not with this particular tactic anyway. It's still a coming here. But here was a report. This is Eleanor Terrett, Fox Business journalist, reporting this news this morning, and she wrote the following. Both the SEC and Ripple have jointly requested a 1-week extension on the date to file the Hinman documents and other requested redacted materials due to the voluminous nature of the materials and redactions. The new requested date for filing is June 13th, 2023. Now, ultimately, Judge Torres did come back shortly after that request was filed, and she did come back and just report, yep, it's granted. So the extension is official at this point. Now, somebody who goes by the name Ego Death wrote, "Hey, John Deaton, Attorney Hogan, and Attorney Mark Fagel, could this be an effort by the SEC and Ripple to protect the SEC's reputation by limiting the extensive display of Hinman emails? Seems like a settlement may be in the works. Correct me if I'm mistaken." Now, I don't mind people asking. We're all just trying to get to the truth, so perfectly reasonable conversation. I will say, in terms of what's going to get out in potential redactions, this and that, it's very narrow because of what the rules already set by Judge Torres in the SEC v. Ripple case. What can be redacted is very narrow. So in terms of the actual content of the emails, everything that we would ever perceive as relevant to us, in the drafts of the speech, that is all coming out. There is no question about that. It is coming out. Unless there were, in theory, some settlement, and then maybe some of this would still be private, but I still don't buy that whole thing. And Attorney Deaton's got some stuff to say on that, which I'm going to share with you a little bit later in the video. But former SEC attorney Mark Fagel responded to this individual and wrote the following. "I personally think that's pure speculation. I can't gauge how much time may be needed to comply with the unsealing order, but it doesn't seem unreasonable, and it's a little weird for lawyers to misrepresent to the court the basis for the request." It's who knows? I think that the SEC is an awful organization, and I don't trust these attorneys further than I can spit. But it could. I'm not. So there could still be some truth that they're thinking. Well, maybe this is going to be very labor intensive, as you'll see a little bit later in the video. It's not crazy to think that part of it. But even so, maybe they were just thinking, well, we might or might not need the time. Why not just add a little cushion for ourselves? Maybe that's just how the SEC asshat pricks were thinking. Maybe that's it. And then here you have Attorney Fred Rispoli, who tagged Attorney Fagel, and he had a question for him. Since, again, Attorney Mark Fagel, having actually worked at the SEC, he will have some perspective that, other attorneys might not necessarily have. And I do get the sense, even though I think he's wrong on all sorts of stuff, and I just disagree, as we're all able to do, I do get the sense that this particular attorney is being intellectually honest. That's the sense I've gotten of this guy so far. And so Attorney Fred Rispoli tagged Mark Fagel and wrote, "How do last-minute settlements happen procedurally at the SEC? If the SEC's litigation team has essentially agreed to terms, is there a wait for the next commission meeting? Can one be called ad hoc for the vote to approve settlement? Is there always communication between commission and litigation team while negotiations are happening?" Which is a pretty damn good question, because procedurally, I have no idea how that stuff works here. Now, here's what Attorney Fagel had to say. "If there is a looming deadline, there are ways to get a recommendation heard by the commissioners outside the weekly calendar, though that's usually used sparingly. In my experience, there wasn't interface with the commissioners during settlement negotiations, though for controversial matters, there might be some discussion between senior officials and commissioner staff to see if something was likely to be approved before making the recommendation." Here's what Attorney Jeremy Hogan had to say in response to this. He wrote, "The SEC and Ripple have jointly requested a 1-week extension to file their motions to the public, which, yes, includes the Hinman emails and pushes the date back to June 13th. If you want gross speculation on what this means, you've come to the right place. Hit the comments," which I thought is funny. And there's no shortage. If you're on crypto Twitter, you've already figured that out on your own. There's all sorts of thoughts on this, and I didn't see anything too terribly crazy. It's mostly just people disagreeing about the degree to which that this might mean that there's settlement, and whatever you believe, I don't think it's crazy, but I'll tell you this even here, I still just, although I'd love to be wrong, and I would love for there to be a settlement, I'm just not currently convinced that this is a sign that it's going to occur, but it doesn't mean it can't occur, and if it does, I'll celebrate with all the rest of you, because I certainly acknowledge that it certainly could occur. Now, somebody named CryptoDog responded to Attorney Hogan and wrote, "Can you give us the legal reasons why they would jointly request this extension?" And Attorney Hogan said, "Most likely the SEC requested the extension because there are thousands of pages to comb through and they thought they might need more time, or ... something else." Attorney Hogan, what's that something else? Is it the S word? Is it settlement? Maybe. And here, somebody also wrote to Attorney Hogan named Johnny and said, "So, when the emails are released, will there be 2 or 3 sentences or words on each page because they've been so heavily redacted? This is what I'm feeling could happen, but hopefully not." Yeah, so this is the topic I was getting at just a couple minutes ago. Attorney Hogan said, "No, only the limited things that the judge has previously allowed to be redacted will be redacted. And this judge was fairly stingy. We'll see almost everything." Folks, I know what I hate, and I don't hate that. Now, here's some perspective from Attorney Rispoli, and he actually does think that this could be some sort of indication of potential settlement. This ain't sitting right with him. So here's what Attorney Fred Rispoli said. "This is weird to me. The parties already had detailed discussions on these redactions the first time around. Could be nothing more than what's written, but it's just odd. This gives me the feeling that something has changed and there is a scramble going on behind the scenes." Yeah, and actually, he elaborates here, actually. He says, "To elaborate on my own wild speculation, Judge Torres's rulings may have prodded the parties into accepting their weaknesses, and there is a last-ditch effort at settlement. The only settlement that makes sense to me at this point is," and he's got 2 little bullet points here. Number 1, Ripple pays large penalty, must register its future XRP sales on an agreed-upon basis, and, number 2, XRP is not a security. Secondary XRP sales are not securities transactions." And then he states, "Both sides give up a lot on this and neither get the true win, the hallmark of a great compromise." So it's possible, again, I mean, I kind of, in a way, I'd like for him to be right. So this is just, but well, here's, and the other reason is, if this ends via settlement, we don't have to worry about the potential of appeals. And not that I'm necessarily convinced that there would be an appeal. Like, for instance, if Ripple wins, I'm not convinced there would be an appeal, because would the SEC want to risk some sort of binding settlement at a higher level court if it doesn't go well? But if Ripple loses, it seems like a virtual certainty they would appeal. I don't know why they wouldn't, but from the SEC's perspective, I could see why perhaps they wouldn't. So we could have a situation with settlement, at least, where we don't even have to worry about this thing dragging out even further. And then there was also this. Somebody asked Attorney Rispoli, or said, rather, this is a comment, maybe a positive sign at the 11th hour, Fred. And then Attorney Rispoli noted the following. So many settlements are born in the 11th hour. So from his perspective, this doesn't seem, like something that would necessarily be wacky if it is indeed the case, if there's something brewing under the surface here. Although, even if that's the case, I'm still sitting here wondering, well, how does this indicate that, though? The fact that they pushed back the release is so they can, go back and forth in terms of a potential settlement for one additional week? I don't know. I mean, if there's going to be settlement, I suspect that one extra week isn't what's going to do it. And then, like, this whole idea, like, Attorney Hogan kind of got it, like, so what? What are they actually, like, misleading the court in terms of why they want this extra week? Or would they actually do that? Either side? Kind of skeptical of that one. Make sure I didn't miss one. Somebody named Tim wrote to Attorney Rispoli and said, question to the lawyers, would it be possible for the SEC now to negotiate away the unsealing of the Hinman emails if Ripple agreed? It was my understanding that once Judge Torres made this ruling, they are getting released no matter what. So any bargaining credit is lost? ? And Attorney Rispoli said, if they settled today, they could probably get away with not making them public, but as I've mentioned, I don't think that's a solid long-term bet from the SEC, as some party eventually will get them publicized, in my opinion. Now, that I think makes a ton of sense. So even if that were the SEC strategy, which I'm not convinced that it is, but even if it is the SEC strategy, okay, we really don't want these things out, well, Ripple already has them, so they're already technically out. It's just the question of, will the public get to see? Well, he's saying here, if there's a settlement, then perhaps no. But, the SEC's so happy, at some point this is going to come up again in another trial, and it just seems like a virtual certainty. At some point, all this is going to come out anyway. So the SEC must be aware of this, and you just got to kind of wonder, like, is this not a factor for them? I would think the answer would be yes. Here's what Attorney John Deaton had to say on all of this. A lot of comments about whether this delay is for settlement discussions. If the Hinman emails were going to lead to a settlement, it would have been before they turned them over to Ripple. In my opinion, the SEC has accepted that the Hinman emails are eventually going to be made public. Rosalind Layton, so that's the Forbes author, although something happened with her last article and it was taken down. I don't know if she's still going to be writing for them, but she's been writing for Forbes for years and covering the SEC v. Ripple case on Forbes for over 2 years at this point. That's Rosalind Layton. So Attorney Deaton says Rosalind Layton intervened for the purposes of the public getting to read these documents. Judge Torres said her motion was moot because the documents must be made public. The Second Circuit will never overturn that ruling. Dragon Chain, Coinbase, etc. will all seek these documents. The SEC just filed a joint request for a 1-week extension based on the fact that there are so many documents that must be carefully redacted to satisfy her ruling. I seriously doubt the SEC would write that and then file an appeal or writ of mandamus. The documents are coming. I know many people hope I'm wrong because they want this over. I've been wrong before, and I hope I'm wrong now. Hell, I'll jump up and celebrate being wrong, but Gensler is moving forward full steam. How can he agree XRP is not a security, but sue Coinbase, claiming the others are? Yeah, folks, wouldn't that look a little bit... Why would they be willing to settle it? What would they gain at this particular juncture in time? That's the question. Because I don't even think they care about the Hinman emails really getting not that much. I think they understand it's just going to happen, so it's just like, I don't know. Then Attorney Deaton also wrote, as expected, a lot of smart people disagree with me, and that's what's great about this community. At the end of the day, we're all speculating, but sometimes the most obvious answer is the correct one. Do you know how many documents have been submitted with summary judgment? Well, and this is interesting. Check this out. He says, want to take a guess at how much money Ripple will be billed for multiple paralegals, associates, and partners to review each document to make sure each redaction complies and satisfies Judge Torres's decision, and then review the SEC submissions as well, I say $250,000 minimum. It's crazy how that gets. Well, if you want it done right, though, and you're paying for the best, looks like Ripple went with the best available representation for this lawsuit. So you think about this is just one thing, $250,000. Such a waste. It could have gone to a Lambo, man. It could have gone to a Lambo. So you guys all tell me what you think, but I've made my stance known. I could be wrong. I admit it. Just like Attorney Deaton says he could be wrong too. He just doesn't think he is. And so maybe there will be a settlement, and maybe this is an indication, and I'm mistaken here, but I'm just not seeing it. So if I'm missing something or there's additional perspective you'd like to share, please drop a comment below. And nobody knows for sure. I think it's fun and healthy to talk about this stuff, frankly. So I'm down for it. Even if you disagree with me, that's fine. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.